What's going on, guys? Welcome back to RC Every Day. So, not too long ago did a video kind of getting started on a new Ratrod build, and I had some new tires and wheels that did not work on that one, just too big, and they actually look great on number 3. Number 3's been through a lot. So this was the third of my Ratrod builds. This came after number 2, obviously. First, adjustable suspension we did out of servos. Didn't spend a whole lot on this one. So it's got terrible electronics. This has terrible electronics. We'll look at it here in a minute. But other than that, it's had some other issues over time. Traveling these events, and everything's outdoors. I was doing pretty good at keeping everything out of the sun. I mean, these prints, I've had this print probably for at least 4 or 5 years. So it's it's not the highest quality of print. It's made out of PLA. Can't be in direct sunlight, so being outdoors at these events, it's always a constant worry that the sun moves throughout the day and start melting my rat rods. And it happened a little bit at Axial Fest. This one did get some damage. Luckily, it wasn't too bad. It could have been a lot worse. We've got, I fixed the front windshield upper piece here across the top had warped in, and this had fallen out. This got knocked out in shipping in transit, me driving across the country with it. That piece had fallen in. This is the original piece out of the roof. I actually had just cut it out because it was really, it has a curve to it. It's concave, or convex, whichever way that is. And there's just no way to get that smooth. The print, I mean, it looks like a volcano. There's just ring. So anything you would have done to that, you would have come through all the layers in the paint. So I just cut it out. And we were going to run open top, and then I did the adjustable suspension, so there was no room for an interior. So I'm like, well, I need to put the top back in. So I wrapped it in some fabric, and the rest is history. So I've reinstalled that after I got back from Axial Fest, and it pushed this piece back into place. And I've reinstalled the windshield, but our visor is still bent down a little bit. It should be out here. So I've got some ideas to fix that. Maybe try to make some kind of cool looking threaded rod that bolts up here and just pushes down there so we can have it back in its place. That might actually be easy enough to just use a scale bolt and a small nut on the backside and just thread it in and push it down there into the windshield until it holds our visor up where it needs to be. Might look kind of cool. Main thing, we got to get these tires and wheels fitted. So these beautiful things are off of that eaglemoss 1/8 scale kit model car, and we talked about that in the last video. I had got the Ecto 1 kit. I started getting the kits every month, and they've apparently gone out of business. So I can't finish my Ecto 1. I don't have enough of the body to even attempt trying to build a chassis for it or anything like that. I've got a hood, I've got a grill, half a motor. I got one wheel and tire. So I got to looking around. The stuff is absolutely expensive. I mean, those kits are like $60-something a month. And I mean, it's complete and utter price gouging. I don't know how they ran out of business, because as many people were buying the subscriptions and what they cost versus what it probably cost to manufacture. It's insane. But nonetheless, my Ecto is never going to get built. So I got on eBay. I've been looking at parts, trying to find a body. And I found one missing the doors. It was the main part of the body. No hood, no front fenders. And it was like, I think it was like $1,100. So that's completely and utterly out of the question, out of the budget. So I ordered 4 tires. I found some tires and wheels. These were, they haven't been selling, so they were down to like $35 plus shipping, which was kind of high. It cost me like $167 shipped for 4 of these tires and wheels. And they did come with a center cap, or a hub cap. I mean, they're old, awesome detailed. They actually say Firestone on them. Old bias ply. It's got a steel wheel, screws through the middle, actually has a valve stem. And it came with these gorgeous Cadillac hubcaps for the 59. Even your valve stem sticks through. And unfortunately, we can't run the hubcaps because there's no way to attach them, because they attach strictly through the hub in the middle of the wheel. And yeah, we can't do that because we're going to have to modify these to fit RC stuff. So we got a little bit of work there, and it's all unclear. But like I said in another video, I've used eaglemoss wheels on the green 5-window Ratrod we built back earlier this year, and those adapted super easy, but the hubs aren't the same. It's not like eaglemoss has a set type of wheel hub. Every wheel is different. So you can see this one basically mounts to the front part of the wheel, and it's got a long shaft. The other ones, it had a shorter shaft, and the back wheel covered all of that completely. So it's a totally different setup, different ball game. But I've looked at it long enough. I think we can make it work. We're going to have to do some surgery on it, and it's going to be sketchy because those are expensive. But the finished look, let me just mock it up here so you can see it. I think this is the final look for this car. So this has been through tons of different tires and wheels. I had some of those big 1/8 scale model car slicks on the back, Goodyear slicks, with some 1/9 RC 4-wheel drive Mickey Thompson wheels, and then I had some actual 1/8 scale model car white walls on the front when we first built it. So that was part of our problem, is we built it around a very tall tire. Second part of our problem is this body's a little big compared to what most of the Ratrod prints are nowadays. It's very wide in the back. Back when I had Nightcrawler's 3Ds quit doing prints, but back when he first started, this was one of the first bodies I got from him. And we kind of based the measurements off of my 1/8 scale 32 Roadster. It was the first rat rod I built. So it's a little wide at the rear, but the proportions and stuff I love. I'm happy with that. But we might have overdone it a little bit with the width on the wheel, the rear end. But I was running wheel wideners on the axle, so fit a standard 12mm hex. But we've got an RC 4-wheel drive Yoda 1 rear axle. I think with this wheel, we'll be able to not have to run a spacer, not have to run a widener, not have to do anything sketchy. It's going to go straight on to the pin. I just got to get it to set deep enough to where I can get a wheel nut in there. And we may have to drill out the front of this. And that's the sketchy part, because that's all one piece and we can't go too wide or this will just fall off and then we've ruined our $45 wheel. But luckily I do have one spare in my Ecto box. I'd have to dig it out, but let's not do that. The front I think will be a lot easier, because these front axles, they have a spindle. They don't have a 12mm hex. There's no drive to them. So they're set up to run on a ball bearing, and it fits very closely on here. Honestly, right now, if I were to drill this out, where I could get a wrench on there, I could put a nut on that, and the front would work fine. There's no way to get a bearing in there. There's no bearing that's small enough for... It's off by probably a millimeter as far as the diameter of the spindle on the axle and the inside of the wheel. It is what it is. I've run stuff like that before. We could find a brass sleeve to fill that gap and tighten everything up. Actually, I might know where something is that might work for that. But let's not get the cart before the horse yet. Let's take a look at what else we need to do to this poor thing, because she's a little dated on the inside. So one thing I was real happy with this build was the body mounts. We've got 2 screws, one on each side right here. They go into shortened Trailfinder 2 body post, and then we have some old school Clodbuster body mounts that just fit through holes in the body, and you just pull the body around those and it comes right off. I can get this one off. There we go. Alright, so here's some of the issues. So it's hard to tell on this side because the rat's nest is over here. This has 4 micro servos, 1 on each corner for the suspensions. The suspension is super simple. 4 servos push down on the shocks. The shocks act as the link connecting the servo to the suspension. And when it's lifted, you actually have suspension. It's beautifully simple. I've got a 5th one of these little cheap servos right here for the steering, and it is okay. These little cheap servos, they seem to lose center all the time. I have issues with that on these because all of this rat's nest of wiring, I have these. I have another one up here. Let me grab it and show you. So these servos are mounted opposite. So I need 2 servos facing the opposite way to move the opposite way at the same time on the same channel. And they have these little servo reversers. So you just put this in line for whichever servo needs to be reversed. It'll reverse the signal. So that way I've got these 2 in the front. One goes left, one goes right. Same in the back. They both go down. One's going left, one's going right. So you have 2 of those on here. And it's basically operates all on one channel of the radio. So then I've got, because I don't do any of the soldering and stuff, so I've got everything Y adapted. So there's an excess amount of wire in here, but it does the job, and it's just ugly. But the main problem with this, other than it's slow as all get out, is underneath here you can't see, we've got a 12-to-1 old school RC 4-wheel drive planetary gearbox. Sometimes you can still find those for sale on eBay. They were extremely robust, very heavy duty, similar, an older version of what's in the Rat King hauler. And you've seen I've pulled an actual full-size car with that rig with chains and a car battery sitting on the back, and I've ridden on it. I mean, that motor, that gearbox can take some torque. But we've got this on a stock axial crawler motor, just something I took out of my old SEX 10-1, I think. So other than that, RC 4-wheel drive Outcry ESC, not the new one. This has an external BEC. It's a huge purple monster. Just when I built this, I was just using the stuff I had. I bought these servos. I think I got 12 of them for 20 bucks on eBay. So not the highest quality components. We even have a knockoff Spectrum receiver, and that's been giving me issues because some of the pins are off in there. So I have to put the pin in the connector and then push it in and hope it stays touching the board long enough to work. So I know somewhere I've got some more regular Spectrum receivers for my DX3. I don't have any more for the DX5. Those are too expensive, and I'm tired of buying those. So we're going to keep using the old stuff that we got. I'm going to find some of those. I've got a cheap, like 1060 style ESC that we're going to swap into this. That way we don't have to have a separate BEC. Another huge problem we have is this is an Ultimia connector, and this is still running nickel metal. And that's, I think, is a majority of our problems with the suspension. We've got so much draw with all these servos doing all their different stuff, and we don't have the voltage. We don't have the power on demand through that nickel metal battery. I filmed a reel for Instagram with it the other day, and I don't even know where my charger is for nickel metal anymore. I found one. It had a little bit in it. It was enough to make it look like it worked on camera, but it barely worked. So we need to definitely upgrade that. Get this thing some more juice. Strap us a little 3-cell in there and see how these things work. Now I do have one Reefs Micro 99 servo. I bought it at Axial Fest to try and fix my Capra, and it did not fix the Capra. So I took it out, been hanging on to it. Ideally, I would want to run Micro 99s all around on this, but these have gotten a little more expensive. I think this was over $100 now. At least that's what I paid at Axial Fest. So kind of high. Don't want to spend $400. I think we're just going to replace the steering servo just to give some kind of upgrade to it other than the ESC and receiver. So yeah, hopefully we don't run across any issues. I have in the past when I've had to rewire this, I've had issues with things not working right again and having to go through wire by wire, trace everything down and see what's where. But we are going to have to cut a good bit of this apart to get this ESC out because there's just a jumble of mess with the external BEC and all that. So we got our hands full. I was hoping this was going to be a real quick fix, put these awesome wheels on it, but now we gotta take care of this thing a little bit. I felt bad after it's kind of been sidelined. I didn't bring it anywhere since Axial Fest because of the melted roof, and yeah, luckily seemed like it's fixed. So we'll just work on that visor first, and then we'll pick up on all this other stuff. Alright guys, so a couple hours have passed, been brainstorming, a lot. Got it figured out, I think. So, a lot of issues. I drilled out that first one, center. You can see I've got it mounted on the front now with a regular lock nut. The problem I'm having is the diameter inside the wheel is larger. It's too large. I thought it was going to be enough to work, but we are going to have to sleeve it like I had mentioned, and it's a Saturday afternoon, and I live an hour from the nearest hobby shop, and I don't think I can make it. So I've made something work. I got another junk box out of all my scrap metal, and I've got this aluminum tube. I don't know how big it is, and it will not fit inside of here. So I've got to make the front one. I've got to drill it out with this larger bit. This is a 3/8. Drill it down to there so I can actually kind of get a nut on there. I have a smaller nut. These came with the MST drift wheels, and they use your, whatever size this is, your 5.5 mil, like your scale, your M3 nuts use. But the problem with them is they don't have any nylon. They are just a, it's got the grip thing on one side, like a lock washer kind of. So those will fit great. I can get the wrench all the way in there and tighten it. But if the tire wobbles the slightest bit and catches this, it starts unthreading. There's nothing holding it there. And with the friction, these wheels are heavy, tires are heavy. I'm pretty sure even if I Loctite it, it's going to back itself off. So I need to get something with nylon, a nylock nut on there. This one is on. It's barely in the nylon. And I don't want to narrow the wheel anymore. It's pretty close to the body. See, we just barely clear at full lock. So I think that's going to be okay. I've sat here and spun it. It's a heavy, heavy tire. And I've spun it back and forth, and I've hit it around trying to see if it'll grab that nut and spin it backwards, and it has not. So that one's experiment out of the way. Now we know what to do. I'm pretty sure the back is going to be easy. So what I've done, I have one of those already done. Not yet. So this one that's held on with something that I don't think I'm going to use. I was trying to use these kind of nuts from the wheel wideners. So you have this, it goes onto your pin, you lock it onto the axle, and then you have this as the nut. It goes down inside of there and threads over the shaft coming out of the axle. And may work. Problem is the ones that I have are all too long. I've got this one on here with a couple of spacers, and it's still not quite enough. And on top of that, it's still a little bit loose inside of the tire. So you can see the back of this one I have cut for the pin to set in, and it's the right distance. And once we figure out our nut situation, we should be able to just bolt these on the rear, after we sleeve it, of course. So since I've already got one on the front done, I'm going to do that real quick. I'm going to switch the drill bits because I need to do the big bore first, which I is sketch doing this, but really wish I had my drill press for this kind of work. Because if you get too far down in here, you basically catch the shaft and it'll just fall off. So we can't drill too deep. Trying to look at my other one. I did little by little, kept testing it. Alright, really hoping I can skip that part on the back wheel because that is sketchy. It bit once and I thought I lost the whole wheel. It threw metal shavings across the room, but now we're going to do the bore. I'm going to go all the way through this. Hit it from the front. Alright, so now this edge is a little burred on here. I need to file that down real quick. The front one I had to do in two pieces because one of them I actually hammered in from the back. And it works, but there was no getting it out. Then I drilled out the front half and realized that it will actually work. So that fits pretty snug. I'm happy with that. I don't want to get metal all over my white wall. I scratched the inside of the other white wall up a little bit with the saw, trying to saw that thing off. So let me clean up this edge of this, and we'll try to get a measurement on how big this actually needs to be. What I did earlier is I just put it in there and spun it around, and it scratched it up enough that this one we might be able to actually mark on the back side. See if that that enough to mark it? Not exactly. So I would like to have brass for this. Brass I think is better for bushings than aluminum, but again, we're not going to drive this car much. I never drive the rat rods a whole lot, and yeah. So I may actually just cut this piece by hand, because I used the Dremel on the last one, and it was a little bit messy. Actually, before we do that, I'm going to clean up this end. It's a little crushed and boogered up. Give us a little bit of a taper. And we'll try to do the same thing after we cut it, but I may not have the same luck with that because it's such a small piece, it's going to be hard to hold. And if we squeeze it with pliers, we may damage it where it won't fit our shaft anymore.
That's what she said.
Alright, got our piece cut. I'm deburring it with the end of the file. Got a couple little rough spots. That side looks pretty good. Don't want to deform it too much. This stuff gets softer the hotter it gets. Alright, flip the car around and show you how it all goes together. Alright, start with, put our spacer on, our shim, or whatever you want to call it, and we'll force the wheel over it. Thing looks good up here. Try to get this thing started. The other one would work so much better because you could get the entire wrench down in there, but this one hold it enough to get it, I think. Maybe. So it looks like it's about as far as the other one, but now we don't have that terrible wobble we had on the shaft, and it'll actually be drivable. So we're just barely in the nylon. This wheel, you don't have the problem with it unscrewing itself. That one, typically, yeah, the opposite rotation wheel nut locks. We don't have directional wheel nuts on many RC cars. And the front is done. I'm still on the fence about weathering the wheels. I really don't want to screw up the white wall, and I'm worried because it's a very thin paint, and I don't know how it'll take to anything, but I think we might have to hit the wheel with some black wash, if I can find any, just to see how it looks. But I want to get it all sorted out and mounted up first, and then we'll take them off because that'll have to dry for quite a while. So we'll do that and take a break this afternoon and come back. But I'm going to look at the backs now. I have not modified any but that one, so I need to cut a lip in this one with the Dremel. I'll do that real quick while we're talking about it. I'm just eyeballing a slot. First one I did, I was real careful, and I did it little by little, and I kept checking the fitment on the actual hub, because you don't want to go too far, because then this surface will hit the bearing on the axle, and that could cause problems. So it just needs to be enough to bite the pin, and then once you tighten it down, it won't let go, and it's not pushing it into the axle housing itself. So do a little quick test of that. Come on. That one looks good. So nothing's perfect. Nothing is ever perfect. And through my best efforts, this body's not perfectly straight on the chassis. That side has, I'd say, 2 millimeter sticking out more than this side. You know, this was my third attempt. And yeah, it is what it is. Nothing's ever perfect. So I think we're doing pretty good with what we got. So we have to take that into consideration here. So I definitely didn't want to get this one too close because we don't want it rubbing the body. As long as it'll clear the body, I'm good with a little bit of offset like that. One thing I never did come back to on this rig is I don't have headlights. I've never been able to find a good headlight for it. I didn't want to stick like axial parts tree light buckets or anything like that on it, but we really need to find something. Because we may, now that we don't have as much steering, we should have room for some buckets on the side, but I don't know. I'm going to take a whack at the back, and once I get one done, we'll come back and see what we can do. Alright, so now we got every tool I own out. Got that done. I'm digging the looks. So first up I'm going to do is pull all the tires off. We're going to hit them with some black wash. I've still got to find that. And then, ooh, I got the right stuff right here. I like this stuff. Somebody put me onto this. This is color wash tint, and it's not a black, it's a brown. This is a French roast color. I've got a few different shades of that, but this is the darkest one, and it's fantastic. All the other, like the Vallejo brand washes, I never really liked those. And we don't want to go rust streaks, because that's strictly for paints, and I'm actually kind of backing off those on lighter colors. That's why on the other rat rod, it's kind of that light blue. I don't want to go too hard on that, so I've got some decisions to make before we move on with that one, but this will be great for the wheels. I'll pull them all off, we'll brush this on, let it run in there, and we'll just leave them laying flat until they dry. These little ESCs, these are so cheap. I think this was around 20 bucks shipped off eBay. It's from Nitro Hobbies. I didn't know that was the actual company. I thought it was just an eBay seller. But you can get these real cheap, and they're LiPo capable. Got a Dean's plug, so it's got everything we need for this, because we're not going hardcore speed machine here. We just want it to function, and we want to be able to get that LiPo power to these servos. So yeah, and get this thing lifting up and down properly again, because the last few times I've done it, it's barely lifted, but that's just because the voltage. A low charge nickel metal battery is useless. Might work as some brass knuckles if you hold it right, but that's the only thing they're good for anymore. And I've got our Reefs Micro 99 for the front. If that's a different width than the other servo that's on there, we may not install that, but we'll take a look. I think it's the same width, but it may interfere with the suspension. I don't know if it's deeper than these other servos, so we got a lot of stuff to figure out. And I've got to find a receiver still. I know I've got a couple old Spectrum receivers sitting around, because I remember I said earlier that orange one, those were cheap knockoffs. I mean, they even had radios, and they were just straight up knockoffs of Spectrum stuff. And those receivers were like $8, and the pins come out of it, and it's not great. So I gotta find one of those, and we'll get started. I gotta clean up some of this mess first. So mostly a success. All the electronics are working all right. Those cheap servos, I don't know if it's those signal reversers that we've got on there. After having it on for so long and up and down so many times, it starts to lean to one side. And that's the only thing I can think that would make that happen is one side or the other has that signal reverser. And yeah, it just is not accurate, I guess you'd say, with the signal after so many uses. But the tires and wheels worked out great, except at the end we got one wheel peel. And so we cut the back of those wheels to fit the pin. And the wheel broke. So it's still bolted on and good, but it is no longer attached to the pin in the axle. The axle pin is still in there, but yeah, I'm not sure the best way to go about that. So I had the sleeve in there, and it was ground out as well to hold the pin. So we're going to take it apart and see what's going on inside of there. Alright, so I think I can see where our problem is. The sleeve we made for this fits perfectly between where the inside lip is, but not where our washers were reaching. So we needed some smaller washers or a spacer or something in there to, or just make the thing longer in the inside, because it had pushed in and all of the pressure was on the outside of the wheel and it broke. There was a piece of it somewhere, but I guess it fell off on the way in. We still have one side, so I think we'll just make another sleeve for that, and maybe we can sleeve the outside. There's no real way to attach that to the wheel, short of maybe gluing it and then notching it the same as well. That we'll have to wait for another time though, because I'll have to find some larger diameter tubing to go around this. Want to clean that up a little bit. And then we might have to get out the old JB weld and yeah, just weld us another layer around that, cut us a longer insert, and give it another go. But overall, it's a success. The steering is fantastic. This thing really, honestly, needs 4 nicer servos. We need the little Reefs 99s for all the suspension. Next event I go to, maybe I'll run in the Reef again and we can talk to him and see if he has any servos that are opposite direction or something like that. You never know what he's got. You can see the weathering on the wheel was super, super light. The white walls are already dirty from the drive. The tires are dirty. And this only broke because I was trying to do donuts. That's the main reason. I was doing right-hand donuts the entire time I was out there playing, and this side, the tire's just heavy. Caught something. There's asphalt out there, it's not smooth. So, yeah, Pavement Princess got a little too bumpy. But the wheels look pretty good. Painted those lug nuts. They're already on there. I mean, it just kind of made sense. And just kind of dingied up the wheel a little bit. But, got to get a picture of it in the shop for the thumbnail. That windshield fix actually, or the visor fix worked great. I did end up having to drill a little hole down there, and just to keep it aligned, but it's got the shape back right. Pretty happy with that. Everything that's been damaged on it before has kind of self-healed over time. When I first put this together, I was wet sanding it, and I'd done the black paint. I think I'd done the 3s, and I'd wet sanded that, and I set it on my front porch to dry in the sun, just to dry the water off of it before we put it back together. And it was a hot summer day or evening, and one side of it did warp from that before the car even was built. So that body's never been perfectly square from the get-go. But that's the joy of the rat rods, man. They keep on keeping on and do what you got to do with what you got. So eventually this car, we've got to do something with the interior. That gearbox, it's kind of slow. I know we don't need it any faster. We'll just break more stuff, but it's undergeared or overgeared, however gears work. But motor's not, I mean, it's a 27 turn, I think that motor is, that stock axial SEX10 motor. Not super fast, and it's bulky, and it's kind of in the way, honestly. I know we don't have a whole lot of space in there with the all the servo mechanisms and things, but I'd like to be able to reconfigure the electronics mount. If you saw how that that sheet metal piece that I made, you know, the battery is up eye level where the driver would be. So there's got to be a way to get that all down a little bit lower to the frame, throw the receiver on one side, the ESC on the other, and make a bench seat, cover it fabric, and then just toss our battery into that. But I don't know. Well, it'll be a battle for another day. We still got a few bugs to work out, but I'm happy it's back in action, and I don't feel bad about spending $167 on tires and wheels and putting it on here. I think that was a good move. It fits the car. It looked way more scale. I like the skinny tire look, and these are just proportionate right with this body, and I'm digging it. It's a shame they wouldn't work on our new rat rod build, but we'll find what's right for that eventually. But that's going to wrap it up, guys. I just wanted to say a couple things. It's been so long since I've done any rat rod stuff since I moved, and I guess I've just had it stuck in my head that I can't build and fabricate and stuff where I'm at, a temporary place to stay. I don't have all my tools. I don't have the big garage. I don't have my welder or anything right now. And I went back and watched some of my older videos when I was first starting to do this, and man, I was outside in the summer heat on the concrete welding stuff out there, so it got me motivated to make these last couple videos and start tinkering around with the rat rods again. I fully intended just to start building a new one, and then these wheels and tires let me know they wanted to be on this one. And this one's been sat on the shelf for a while, so it's time to include it back with the pack of them. And I think it's definitely looking good. So, that being said, hopefully I can get some more rat rod content, because I know everybody liked the troubleshooting and engineering side of it. That's why I love it too. Just been kind of taking it easy and doing unboxings and on-road stuff, and you know, we got to do a mix of everything. So we got to bring back the rat rods to the channel and have some more fun with this stuff, because definitely not done designing. I don't have a clue yet what we're doing with that new one, because that body is just funky, the shape and stuff. I hadn't found the right look for it yet, but that's half the battle, man. That's part of the fun. Once we get the look we want, find the motor we want, the tire and wheels, and the stance, then it's just make it all stick. But I'm going to wrap it up, guys. Appreciate y'all watching. Appreciate everybody who's been subscribed for a long time, been with me since way back when. And get out and do something fun with the hobby. Do something different. Think outside the kit. Keep it scale. I'll see you on the next video.